All right. Hi, guys. Welcome. So, my name is Cagney Collins. I am the Director of Education at the Ohio Beef Council. And today we're going to be doing a live tour. So, if you guys have any questions, just hop up, go in front of the camera, or just wave your hands, and we will try to get them answered as soon as possible. But if you don't want to do that, you can also send any questions in the chat box, and we'll answer those. So today we are touring the Stickel farm at their feedlot. So I'll go ahead and let Erin introduce herself and their operation.
Hey guys, good afternoon. My name is Erin Stickel, and you are here today at Stickel Farms Incorporated in central Wood County, Ohio. So just between Toledo and Findlay is kind of where we are located in the former Great Black Swamp. So we are a diversified operation here in Webster Township, and what that means is that we do a little bit of everything here on this farm. We grow row crops, processing tomatoes, we grow hay, and we have a hay and straw business. And then additionally, we feed cattle. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And I'll kind of touch on the fact that every piece of what we do in this operation kind of feeds into one another. That's part of our sustainability procedures, part of our growth and development perspectives for this operation. So like I said, my name is Erin, and I am the wife of Andy Stickel. And Andy and his brother Brian are the main daily operations and partners in this particular farm, as well as my father-in-law and mother-in-law, Dale and Elise. So because we like to utilize each person's skill sets to their full advantage here on this operation, I've kind of been the one that takes on a lot of the marketing and as a education and industry involvement. So I'm actively involved in the Ohio Beef Council. I'm on the board of directors there. And then I also have a job off the farm. So I'm a financial advisor with a firm, and I do life insurance and financial advising and investments for clients all throughout North America. So I really love that opportunity. I love being on the farm, and I love being involved in agriculture. I spent almost 10 years as a commodity merchant with a very large grain business, and took a break to take care of the family. Andy and I do have 4 kids. So we have a 13-year-old, almost 10-year-old, 3-year-old, and 2-year-old. So we've got a lot of things going on in our life. And, obviously our farm is our number one and main priority after the family. And then my day job. So having a day job really helps me to diversify our income. And because agriculture is so volatile and there are so many unknowns in our world, and 2019 has just been horrible. I'm sure you guys down there at Sydney have felt some of that as well in your particular region. But up here, it's just been not great. And so having a job off the farm has really been a help and a real positive aspect for us and our family as we look into our future and even just our monthly budgeting. So, I am a financial planner, so, you would think that we'd be really well set on that, but, the volatility in agriculture sometimes doesn't make that so easy. So we have to be prepared and really cognizant of the risks and also the rewards that we are blessed to take care of every single day. So enough about me, but just want to kind of give you my background and where I came from. So grew up on a farm just down the road from here, actually, and then Andy and I knew each other our whole lives growing up, and when we got married, we knew this is what we wanted to do. And can you guys hear me? There's a plane going overhead. Is that bothering you?
No, you're good.
Okay. When we got married, we knew this is what we wanted to do, was continue to raise our family in agriculture, in production, and give them the opportunity to see the life cycle all the way through. So here today, we're here to talk about our beef cattle production, and the cows are kind of getting antsy on us, so we're going to kind of walk with them a little bit here. But we raise commercial cattle, and you're here today for a feedlot tour. So feedlots look very different depending on the region of the U.S. that you are in. And here in Northwest Ohio, there's not a lot of excess range land or pasture ground available because our soil is very fertile, highly productive ground. very few folks are willing to turn over land to graze livestock, and that's okay. And that's just all about the economics of what goes into one's operation. And so for us, what you're looking at today is our little 30-acre pasture that our cows have available to them just a few months out of the year, because at times we'll let this grow up here in the spring, we'll bale this pasture, and then we'll turn the cows out later. Our cows live the majority of their life with us in a dry pack lot. And it works out really well because they're in a very controlled environment where we can monitor their calving needs, monitor their health, and have a very distinct and deliberate opportunity to watch over our herd. So like I said, the girls live out here most of their life. We have about 40 head of commercial cattle. You'll see a diversity here in the picture with a lot of red Angus based genetics, and then some Angus based, black Angus based. And then there's a few Baldy cows mixed in here. But we really like the red Angus based genetics for our herd. They're easy calving. They're really great on the rail. And then from a consumer standpoint, the eating experience is just as good as other opportunities as well. So we like this particular size of herd for us. About 40 cows is all we can really handle from a total volume standpoint. And so we take the calves that the cows have, and then we feed those out, and they go into our feedlot, which we'll walk back over to the feedlot here in a little bit. But so let me back up just a little bit. So we've got 40 cows, commercial based. All of our cows are bred naturally. A lot of operations do artificial insemination and work on getting their calves with a diverse genetic base. We don't take that stance mainly because we are extremely busy, and we do not have the time to sync cows or to get them bred just at the right moment with AI. So we choose to live cover everything. We own a couple bulls that we mix in every couple of years, and they get the cows bred, and we calve kind of all year round. Again, because of the maintenance of syncing cows and getting them bred, we just kind of let things happen naturally around here, and that's okay. It works for us. It works from an economic standpoint because we have a fairly large freezer beef business, and with that we have customer demand all year round. So having calves throughout the year allows us to always have calves the right size, so we know that we're going to have consumer demand for our product, that we can have the availability to partner with some local processors to take those guys to town. So that being said, that kind of brings us to the conversation of the life cycle here on our farm. So most of the cows you're looking at here are between 3 and 5 years old. We tend to leave them in the mix for 6, 7, 8, 9 years, just depending on how they're getting around. Obviously, structure and hoof quality and just general phenotypic traits are super important because, again, like I've mentioned a couple times already, we're extremely busy. So if a cow is super high maintenance, I mean, frankly, just like humans, if they're super high maintenance, nobody has time for that, right? So we have to make sure that the cows that we're maintaining and choosing to take care of here on our operation can take care of themselves. They can get around okay. They can lay down and have a calf without much help or any help, frankly. And that allows them to be very self-sustaining in that particular context. So calves here get weaned between 4 and 6 months of age, and then after that, they'll go into our feedlot. So that kind of covers a high level on a bunch of things, Cagney. So feel free to direct me in however you want to move forward here.
Do you guys have any questions so far?
Maybe let's start walking.
Can you guys hear us okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I missed the part where we said, where in Northwest Ohio is the farm at?
We're in central Wood County, so just north of Bowling Green.
Sure, okay. You guys have any questions yet? where do you guys get a lot of your females from? Are they raised within the herd and kept, or do you guys outsource those?
Great question. So most of the females on our operation are ones that we retain, but at times we've went and purchased commercial heifers or even commercial cows from other breeders that we know throughout the country. Obviously, our Red Angus-based genetics, that used to be kind of an exclusive or a very much a smaller offering. So there are a few ranches in Kansas that we've partnered with in the past to bring some of these cows this way.
What would you say is one of the biggest challenges to raising, 40 head of cattle and their offspring? What's one of your biggest challenges?
One of the biggest challenges here for us in this particular region is feed availability, and also, frankly, maintaining our lots and our housing operations. So, like I mentioned before, our pasture is at a minimum. What you're looking at is what we have. So these cows live dry lotted or under roof 90% of the year, and so making sure that we have feed availability, we have feed that is economical, and we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit when we get into the feedlot. But we're not really worried about these cows having their calves and laying down and having good productive offspring, because we're choosing the genetics based on that. And so for us, it's truly just about the economics behind the feed availability here in this region. And also when it rains like 10 inches in April and then in May, and it can just be really really messy sometimes around here.
Okay, we have any questions yet from you guys? All right, I think they're still warming up here a little bit.
They're so excited about it. They can't stand it.
All right, Erin, you talked a little bit about calving. Is there any certain place you guys calve? Do you have a calving shed? Maybe touch on that a little bit.
Oh, sure. Good question, Cagney. So I kind of talked about the cows being under roof most of the year or in a lot, which is very true. But when we see a cow that we know is about ready to calf, or we saw her be bred, or we kind of knew when her cycle was happening, because record keeping is extremely important. Even though I said we're a little bit casual about how we breed cows and kind of let the bulls run all year round, we always are paying attention. So we always know when one's cycling or when she does get bred. And anytime we know that a cow's about ready to calf, we go ahead and move her into our calving barn, which is just on the other side of our feedlot. So we can really monitor and make sure that she's not having any problems, that the calf is healthy, and that we're able to maintain a very safe and quality environment for those two as they get through the first few days of their lives together.
Great, perfect. All right, while Erin is transitioning to the feedlot there, I'm going to give you guys some little facts information. There are actually 17,000 Ohio beef farms, and 296 head of those are beef cattle. And that puts us about 12th in the country in terms of how many heads of cattle we have. And 98% of those are family owned and operated. So it's very much a family diameter here in Ohio with Ohio farms. Right, looks like Erin, we're about in there. Maybe like when you get in there, talk a little bit about what's the difference between a cow-calf operation and a feedlot operation.
Yeah, great question, Cagney. And I think the instructor was maybe alluding to that just a little bit earlier as well. So our particular operation, we have both cow-calf and a feedlot, but we are mostly based for our feedlot operation. So cow-calf operations are operations where the producer primarily focuses on having the mama cows and the baby calves born live and healthy, and then he sells those baby calves to another operation to be fed out through harvest and then enter the supply chain. So here, because we do have our 40 cows, we are going to have offspring that enter our feedlot, but then the feedlot is where we focus on our production. So we like having the mama cows because we like to have those calves available for our freezer meat customers, and we just frankly, Ian and I both, we just love cows. We love mama cows. We love taking care of them. And it could be a real pain in the neck when it's July or January and there's a blizzard. But that's what we choose to do. And that's just the life we've been given. So we're just going to embrace it. But a feedlot is when cattle are kept in one particular area and fed out for the duration of their life. So cattle that enter a feedlot are between 600 and 800 pounds, depending on the feedlot's priorities. And then after that, then they're fed out until they're about 1,350 pounds. And then they enter they're harvested and enter the supply chain for quality eating experience for the consumer. So on this particular farm, we are located in a very fantastic region for feed ingredients. We have all of our cattle are fed a total mixed ration of fiber, energy, protein, and highly digestible ingredients. And so here we sit right in the heart of a lot of ethanol facilities. So we utilize a lot of co-products that come off of different production practices. So distillers grains or wet distillers grains, depending on availability, are a key ingredient in our ration. And that's a very high protein and good energy source for these cattle. And it's also utilizing the co-product of a process that otherwise those ingredients would be going to the wayside. So, and it's also a fairly inexpensive ingredient into the ration. So with distillers grains, hay that we make here on our farm ourselves, and then with corn screenings or even corn that is grown here, that is part of the whole process for us in developing our ration that is extremely economical, as well as, of course, highly nutritious for the cattle that we're feeding. Another cool thing that a lot of folks don't know is that cattle can digest a large range of things. Cattle are one of the best sustainability cheerleaders and processors in the world. They can take ingredients or products, weeds, whether it's on the prairie or in the mountains, or even here where we're in the heart of industry country. These cattle right now are on a part of the ration is a bakery diet. So byproducts of the bakery process, it might be donuts, pasta, bread, those waste items that don't make the cut for people food, but are still high quality items. It may just be a batch of donuts that like didn't seal all the way, and so those have to get thrown out because they are not good enough for the packaged food goods. So they throw those out. So we are able to take advantage of that process and take those human food waste items or human food byproducts and feed them to the cattle because they're highly digestible nutrients that are super high in energy and even protein and fiber, of course. And so we include that into our total mixed ration at a low cost and a super high nutrition level for the cattle. So that's kind of a fun fact that not only are we using co-products from biofuels, like the ethanol process and even like soybean meal from the biodiesel process, but we are able to then use products like bakery and haylage and things like that come from other production practices into our feedlot situation. So that's really, really cool thing that we are very blessed to have at our disposal. And kind of like I said before, feedlots throughout the country look extremely different. You go out west and feedlots are hundreds of thousands of acres of cattle and pens. And that's awesome because their climate is tolerant for it. The cattle are tolerant for it. But here, kind of like we mentioned, we were out looking at the cows. We don't have that luxury, right? Like it rains a lot here. It's highly volatile. Today's the nicest day we've had in quite some time. And so we take advantage of that by we account for that by raising cattle indoors and having a feedlot that's under roof that we can control the environment. There are curtains on both sides, the east and west side of this particular building, and then a roof and doors open on both sides for airflow and climate control. So right now our barn is not full. We've only got about 150 head in here right now. We typically can house around 200 to 225, and we turn the barn once a year, or I guess technically twice a year. We're feeding about 400 head a year. And we were kind of talking about the difference in cow, calf, and feedlots. Well, we source 99% of the cattle that run through this feedlot from cow calf producers. And so that's really great because we're able to partner with other producers throughout the country that need to have a home for their offspring. And then we can feed them out and take care of them for the duration of their life. From a life cycle standpoint, the cattle enter the feedlot at between 600 and 800 pounds. And honestly, it just depends on the economics. We can feed cattle as young as 200 pounds, but it's been proven and the research shows that cattle that enter a feedlot situation between 400 and 800 pounds typically tend to do better. They have a higher rate per day of gain. Their stomach profiles are better. And so the cattle just perform better. So that's when we like to bring them in here. They're also less susceptible to sickness. So when cattle enter our feedlot, we keep them for 4 to 6 months. And then when they're about 1,300 pounds or so, they then enter the supply chain. And that's when our time with them is done, and then they move on. Oh, what I was saying about cattle coming in between 600 and 800 pounds, it just depends on the economics. Everything we do here is based from an economic standpoint. No one's going to be in business or take care of anything if they're not making some sort of profit. Yes, we love what we do. We believe in what we do. The good Lord has entrusted us to take care of these animals. But if it's not making us money, we can't support our families. And so at the end of the day, it has to be economical. So bringing cattle in at different sizes and different ages is all based on the economics. If the market opportunity is not there for us to bring cattle in at a certain age, or we know that it's not going to be economical for us to sell them at a certain price, then we have to be very cognizant and very aware of that. So we're making decisions based on the economic opportunity for us as well. So I'm sure in your ag classes or even in your other business classes, you talk about basic supply and demand 101 economics and everything. So cattle operations, farming operations, that's actually where it all starts, because no goods can flow through any process until a farmer harvests the crop. So
Great. All right. Do we have any questions?
I can ask it for him. He was asking about the economics of, a heifer when you do have to replace from outside the herd, what the cost of that, and a bull. I know we talked about natural breeding and what those costs might be.
Sure, that's a great question. So for us, we typically replace 2 to 3 of our females a year from outside the herd. Now, this year we aren't going to do that because the economics aren't there. It's going to be too expensive for us to replace one when we know our return on investment is not going to be what we need it to be. But typically a mature cow, or even a heifer was the question. A heifer is going to run anywhere between $1,500 to $2,000, depending on where she's coming from. The market price today, about $1.25 per pound. And so if you're bringing a heifer in at 1,300 or 1,500 pounds, I can't do mental math. So you guys, you can work that math up. But anywhere between $1,500 to $2,000 per head is what you're looking at to bring in a heifer for replacement purposes. And maybe not that high. It just depends on where it's coming from and where you're looking at and who what you're trying to work out in the business. And then from a bull standpoint, so a bull's going to run you probably around $3,000 to $5,000, again, depending on where it's from and what you're looking at. And for us, because we choose these Red Angus genetics, our purchase of our bull a few years ago, was kind of in that range. So for us, that's an expense that we know is going to have a return because those offspring are good performers. Their cutability and their carcass merit is very high, and so that returns to us, unfortunately, it's a very long cycle, right? Almost a year and a half before we see the returns after a calf is born. But we know that that's penciled in, and that's part of our budgeting process throughout the year.
Any other questions? All right, one question I had was, you talked about environmental concerns, when inside. What are some of the things, you talked about the curtains a little bit. What are some things you have to be cognizant of in terms of environment, and maybe even a little bit of your vaccination protocol and things like that?
Yeah, great question. So because we are in a controlled environment and cattle are all very close together, if there is sickness can run rampant very quickly, right? So, you just think about it like in your schools or on your sports teams or whatever, somebody gets a cold, they pass this through everybody right away. And so same thing can kind of happen in an enclosed feedlot situation. But because we do have extremely good ventilation and because we are amongst these cattle every single day, we're able to spot when we see one that probably isn't feeling well, or if his head's down or his ears are down or back, or he's off by himself, we know that they're probably not feeling well. And so we are able to monitor that animal and then treat for that sickness as soon as possible. So our particular operation, this kind of makes the rest of this question unique. Our particular operation, we raise all of our cattle in an all natural environment. So you guys have heard all the buzzwords, right? All natural, no hormone free, grass fed, all those things. So just to be really clear, this particular operation is a conventionally fed, all natural operation. Yeah, right? Do the math on that. But all that all natural means is that these cattle are not implanted when they're young. And if they are treated with an antibiotic, they no longer meet the protocol to be in the all natural program. So if an animal is sick, they are treated for their illness, but then they are pulled out. We know that we cannot sell them in the all natural program because record keeping is extremely important. And so anytime we treat one, we know we have to pull them out of the all natural program. And if that happens, then we sell that animal for freezer meat or utilize him, for our own family's food. So obviously that just because they're sick and they're treated doesn't mean that they are no longer safe to eat because there is a withdrawal time. But anytime an animal is treated with an antibiotic, there's a timeline that has to be met. So if, let's say a withdrawal time is 10 days and you treat that animal on October 1st, that animal cannot die until October 11th. Does that make sense? So knowing that has given that animal enough time for its body to process that antibiotic, for it to do its job, and then transfer out of that animal's system. So every animal that enters the supply chain is free of antibiotics and free of any other medication because of those withdrawal time protocols that are absolutely mandatory to follow. So again, because this is a controlled environment, we're able to move the curtains up and down. Today is just a gorgeous day in Northwest Ohio, but it's usually super windy here, pretty overcast most of the time. And so we have the ability throughout the day to adjust the airflow in here. And honestly, on days when it is super cold are some of the best days because the airflow, because the air is cold, you can get a breeze through this building and the cattle are nice and tight and comfortable in here. And typically when it's colder, pests and flies and things aren't quite as rampant either. So that's another really high quality offering for this type of setup.
Okay, any questions, guys? We're being really shy. I apologize for that, guys.
Not at all. No, not at all. We're just glad you guys are here. And how old, what ages are you? What ages are you guys?
We have a lot of sophomores in this class, animal and plant science. So just really getting into the in-depth. They've had, basics of ag, food, and natural resources, but we're really starting to get into the nuts and bolts of animal science and things like that. So
very, very cool. So that's something maybe I can touch on a little bit here that we haven't talked about yet is what we do from a true sustainability standpoint, right? Because I talked a little bit about earlier our operation being so diversified with our row crops and tomatoes, hay and straw, cattle, etc. Every piece of that puzzle impacts one another. So because we have the row crops, we're able to produce feed, and because we have feed, we're able to raise cattle, and then cattle produce manure, which then offers us a fertilizer for our row crops. So you can see that whole life cycle kind of develop. And the manure, and even frankly, you could call it manure production for this farm is super critical to our bottom line. With the utilization of manure in our fertilizer rotation, we've cut our use of commercial fertilizers by over 80% in the last 5 years. That's huge. That's huge from us from both a land and water quality management standpoint, but also from an economic standpoint. I was a commodity merchandiser for 10 years, and I'm also a financial advisor now. So the economics is my forte, right? And that's what I rely heavily on. And so, like I said earlier, if it doesn't pencil, we're not going to do it. But the utilization of manure into our nutrient management plan is so critical for our sustainability and to manage what we know to be a super healthy, I'm going to say organic because it is, manure is an organic matter, material to put on our crops, to put on our hay, alfalfa ground, and all those kind of things. So all of our manure is tested on a yearly basis, on a batch basis, before it is applied to our particular farms. So then we know that we're not over applying nitrogen or phosphorus or any of the nutrients that are in the manure into the soil when it's not needed. Right here where we're located, we're just like 20 miles from Lake Erie. 30 miles. I'm probably not giving enough credit. About 30 miles. I can get there in 20 minutes. So 30 miles from Lake Erie. And with that, every single waterway that's in this region flows into the lake. It all goes to the Maumee River and then to the lake. So we have to be super cognizant of the amount of nutrients we're applying on the ground, how we utilize cover crops so that we can spread manure, because that's one of the big holdups here in our particular region is the ability to spread manure all year round. Cattle don't stop pooping every day. It's happening every single day, right? So we have to be able to apply that manure and have a place to hold it until we can get on the field. And like I said before, because weather is traditionally just not great here 50% of the year, we only have a very short window of when we can apply nutrients before things change. So we have a nutrient management plan, we have a nutrient holding area, manure holding area here on our farm, and then when the conditions are right, when the cover crops are in, or as soon as we get done harvesting before the ground freezes, we are then able to spread manure and utilize the nutrients produced by the cattle into the soil.
Yeah, everything Erin just hit on is so key, especially when she was talking about sustainability. I'm sure you all have maybe talked about it or heard that word sustainability a lot. And every farmer and producer strives to be sustainable for their operation. For them, that being sustainable is making sure there's enough resources for the next generation. So this next generation can help feed everybody. You know, they strive to produce safe, nutritious beef while balancing environmental stewardship. Farmers feel responsible for the land and being able to produce all the food. And it's just like it shows with Erin and all the precautions that they're taking with water quality. They strive to better the environment and to protect it.
Yeah, it's so important for us. And, that's something that, you guys who are, in high school and, starting to kind of decide what you're thinking about doing with your lives, if you're even that far down the path. But it's very critical that you do try to understand, that word sustainability is it's not a buzzword anymore. It's an actual thing. And the ability to sustain the land, sustain the livestock, sustain the people that the farm supports. Those are all pieces of the puzzle that we as livestock producers and crop farmers have to be very aware of. And, we're not going to make decisions that are going to be ill-fitting for the future. We want this operation. So this particular farm is the third generation farm. The farm where my husband and I live is just like six miles from here. The main about 6 miles from here. And that's where I grew up, where my family farmed. Both my grandparents on both sides farmed. My dad's a farmer. My dad works in the industry now. And, so we want this to be a generational activity and investment and lifestyle, frankly, for our families. And so, the decisions we're making, we want to be very transferable. We want to be, available for that sustainable amount of time.
Yes, perfect. That's huge. All right, let's start. We got 7 minutes left. So do you guys have any questions right now?
We do have one student back here that has a question. Hopefully you can hear him.
How many times do you guys stand your
I don't know if you can hear. Did you hear him?
I got how many times, and that was it.
Yeah. How many times how often do you change your bedding, and what is your primary source of bedding for your cattle?
Yeah, great question. So you can kind of see here, we're on like a very dry pack manure base. This barn will get cleaned out probably twice a month. That's how much manure is created here. So these cattle actually that you're looking at just came to our farm about 3 weeks ago. And this barn was completely cleaned out when they got here. So you can kind of see, we're standing probably like 3 or 4 inches of manure pack, and we use all straw bedding. At certain years we do use like like corn husks and things like that, just depending on what the situation was. But last fall we didn't have a chance to make any of those, so we use all straw that we make here on our farm, or that we purchase from other farmers for our bedding purposes. And right now, I mean, these cattle are young, so they are obviously not producing quite as much as a total fat steer yet, but a couple times a month, and then we do bed probably two to three times a week, depending on the weather conditions. And it's been super nice and dry here this week, so obviously the bedding stays in a little bit better condition for a longer period of time. But that's just something, again, we monitor. We're out here amongst them every day. If these cattle were about 2 months older, they would all be standing around me trying to lick me. But because these guys are kind of new yet, they're not so sure of the whole surroundings. But you can see that they're not skittish. Andy, Brian, or I are out here every single day walking amongst them to make sure that we are aware of what's going on out here in the feedlot.
Yeah. A little louder, Johnny. He said, do you know what the target date would be for the group that you have there for slaughter? I know it kind of varies depending on some conditions, but when you're expecting that group to be ready?
Yeah, great question. So this is middle of October. So let's call it November 1st. So November, December, January, February, March. So March to first part of April will be the target date for this group to move out. Again, it just, like you said, it depends just a little bit depending on how they grow through the winter. As long as we stay sickness free, they'll probably be closer to the first part of March, because we know that this particular producer who we source these cattle from always gives us a high quality set of animals that perform really well. So I think we'd probably shoot for the first part of March with this particular group, to answer your question.
You guys have any more questions?
Any other questions? I think that's it.
Great. Well, guys, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for joining us here today. Hopefully you learned a little bit, and we gave you a little bit of exposure into what a beef cattle operation looks like in this particular region. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Andy and I and Brian believe that we should be extremely transparent in the things we're doing on our operation. So we welcome groups here all the time. So don't hesitate to give us a call or email us or reach out to the team, and they can get in touch. But happy to be a part of the education process today and inform you guys kind of what we do. And thanks for your time. And always remember, beef, it's what's for dinner.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys, so much.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you so much for sharing your passion and your guys' operation with us today. Now, if you guys have any other questions, or if you'd like any other resources for your classroom, please feel free to reach out to me and I can help you out in any way possible. So thanks, guys. Hope you guys all have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.